Imagine a world where politicians who claim to fight against prejudice openly shame men for a physical characteristic that they have no control over, with very little long-term consequence to their political career. A physical characteristic that has been proven to have tangible disadvantages on every aspect of their lives. A form of prejudice which largely goes unrecognized by that very same political party which was built around the foundation of standing up for marginalized groups. Well, now you don't have to imagine, because that's exactly what progressive feminist politician Anna Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, said earlier this week. Give it a listen and then we'll talk about it.
Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's like 4'10". And he looks like he is so mad that he is 4'10", that he's taking that anger out at any other population possible.
Now, my immediate and obvious reaction is, imagine if a male politician on any side of the political spectrum were to make a comment about his female opponent in a way that referenced something about her body. Imagine the backlash there would be for that. His career would be over. Now, it's basically common knowledge at this point that the majority of young men under 35 have strayed away from the Democrat political party because our issues are not being addressed or acknowledged at all. We're just being blamed for all the problems in the world. And I just find it hilarious that this woman, who in the midst of this effort to take back the young male vote, she goes ahead and says something that demonstrates how completely and utterly out of touch she is with the issues and insecurities that young men face. I get that the majority of women in the world, when they see a short guy, they don't see a human being, they see an object. There's been studies done on it. The part of the brain that lights up when women see a short guy or an unattractive guy is the same parts that light up when they see a piece of furniture. They don't acknowledge that they exist. So it does make sense to me that within the mind of this young, fertile female politician, she subconsciously feels that these young, short men don't actually exist to her. She only sees the tall guys as actual people, and as a result, she doesn't realize that the majority of men are under 6 feet. So yeah, that's not going to help their case. But think about it. Why is height the only acceptable insult? If she was to reference any other unchangeable characteristic of someone's body, be it skin color, facial structure, body shape, hell, even weight is less acceptable of an insult to use against someone than height. And weight is something you have control over. And I also find it interesting how it's almost always women using this height-based insult. And when I think about why height is the only acceptable body-based insult to use in this day and age, especially from women, I ask myself, could it be that it's because these women enjoy worshiping height and like seeing short men get beaten down further? I mean, it makes a lot of sense when I referenced that study in past videos about how women are more attracted to bullies, and bullies just happen to beat down on small guys. So when even progressive Democrats are using height as an insult, nothing makes it clearer than that Heightism is truly the last acceptable form of prejudice. And unless my videos can make it mainstream, I don't know if that is ever going to change. That's why it's up to you guys to like, share, and comment on this video to help push it through the algorithmic suppression I've been experiencing. The world needs to hear the truth. Society has banned every other form of prejudice except this one. And it's obvious and clear that both women and men and Democrats and Republicans alike all have collectively come to the conclusion that short is bad and tall is good. And as bad as it is for anyone to do that, what's worse is the hypocrisy that comes along with when someone who labels themselves as a progressive, someone who fights for the defense of marginalized groups and disadvantaged peoples, the same people preaching equality no matter what someone looks like, still mock short men. Weight shaming, oh, that's horrible. You're a horrible person if you shame someone for their weight. But if you shame a man for his height, something that's been proven to have a negative effect on his quality of life, his feelings, every aspect about his experience in the world, something that is such a problem that people have developed lifelong complexes and depression surrounding this whole thing. And the people that claim to fight against that are the ones pushing it. It's clear to me that this progressive crowd is really just virtue signaling. They only care about the isms that are trendy, the ones that capture the most votes. And because feminists and people of color as a whole, especially of the female variety, don't really give a shit about men's issues with height, they completely disregard, minimize, and deny the issues that we face, even though I have a piece of information here that shows it has a bigger impact on someone's life potential than any other demographic characteristic, including race. The fact is, these female progressive politicians don't see us as human beings. And as a result, they don't care about our vote because apparently we don't exist and our problems don't exist. I would know. I'm a 5'3.5" male, and I got pushed to the point of anguish and just years and years of mental suffering until I finally just snapped, and now I'm a masochist. That's the only way I was able to cope. Other men, they're bullied and shamed for it by women and men alike to such a degree that they end up getting $100,000 cosmetic surgery that cripples them for 1 to 2 years. Now, as I've said before, this isn't a left versus right thing. Women on the right do the same thing. But the difference is they're not trying to spout equality and progressive values and fighting for marginalized groups and protecting people and raising awareness against microaggressions. So they're not the hypocrites. And there's one thing I learned about in life, and that's that the people who have the most power are the ones you can't make fun of. And I know this is counterintuitive because of what we've been told our whole lives about how minorities are underprivileged and don't have as much political power. But it's very clear to me that when you look at comedians and you look at politicians and you think about all those other groups, people of color, Muslims, women, fat people, people of Hebrew heritage, if you ever shame any of them for a physical characteristic of their bodies that they can't change, or let's just say women in general, make fun of their breast size or their lack of voluptuousness or something like that, your political career or comedy career is going to take a massive hit, and it could possibly be over with for good. But if you make fun of short guys or shame people for their height, everyone just laughs. And the real reason for that, that's pretty obvious to me, is that short men are the group of marginalized people that have the least power in our society. We're at the bottom of the social hierarchy. And you'd think that the political party that goes around to marginalized groups and saying, hey, we got your back, would actually give a shit about the feelings and life experience and disadvantages of a group of people that are literally at the bottom. But that's what comes with being at the very bottom. There's no real financial or social benefit from helping rise up people that everyone has collectively decided are okay to bully and beat down. And that's what makes this kind of behavior so despicable. The other thing that makes this whole situation just totally ridiculous and hypocritical is the fact that there is a huge overlap between Heightism and racism. And the reason for this is that there are a ton of racial groups and ethnic groups across the world that have migrated to the United States. Specifically, the Latino ethnicity is well known for having a disproportionate number of short men in their racial group compared to European males. And what's most hypocritical is the fact that AOC has positioned herself to be the number one defender of this Latino ethnic group, yet she doesn't even realize that her height-worshiping ways are directly hostile towards the feelings and experience of the majority of men that she wants to attract to her political movement. So in a way, when she equates short height with a negative connotation, she's actually insulting people of Latino and Asian heritage in an indirect sort of way. Now, she made an attempt to defend herself because apparently a lot of her supporters were short men who were a little bit upset by what she said, and she scrambled to try and position herself as someone who is completely body positive and loves her short kings. Listen up.
I want to express my love for the short king community. I don't believe in body shaming. I am talking about how big or small someone is on the inside. Physically, men of smaller stature can come across. They are spiritually 6 foot. If you're a good dad, if you stand with women, if you're not belittling immigrants, you're like, 6'3" spiritually. I don't know. Am I being problematic?
Yes, you're being problematic. Now, I can hear the apologeticness and acquiescence in her tone of voice, but she still doesn't fully realize that what she's saying is still perpetuation of a form of microaggressions. And by doubling down on this metaphor, she's just reaffirming these self-destructive, body-shaming microaggressions that push men deeper and deeper into those insecurities. And it's no wonder that short men across the world are committing seppuku at astronomically higher rates than any other segment of society, and lining up to mutilate themselves and go into debt to get surgery because they have been bullied and abused that much by women and society in general. She's just continuing to contribute to that. And somebody's got to educate people about why that's wrong and hypocritical. Loser Maxing said it himself. By saying what she's saying, she's still saying short equals bad and tall equals good. She shouldn't be using height as a metaphor to define a person's value. And like Loser Maxing said as well, how ridiculous would it be if a man said, "Oh, that woman over there, because she agrees with my political views, she's got big titty energy." How do you think that would go over with women? And if you think about it, that's not even close to as bad because the surgery available for breast enhancement is much cheaper and much easier and much less risky. Yet men across the world are lining up by millions to go into debt, to spend 2 years bedridden because the society has banged it into them that much that being short is inferior. The reality is, this whole thing is a cultural blind spot for female leftist progressive politicians. It's a blind spot because many, if not most, of their male supporters happen to come from shorter stature segments of the population. As much as these women rail against white men, if a tall, broad-shouldered white guy walked up to them and said,
"Hey, I want to go out with you, but I'm a racist Republican, is that okay?"
they would be like, yes, please. And guess what? If the most progressive male feminist in the world, who just happened to be a 5'5" Latino, walked up to them and asked them the same thing, they'd be like,
"Ew, get away from me, you creep."
Or they just would completely ignore you because they see you as a bedside lamp. So if you're a short Latino man and you are a supporter of AOC in any way, my opinion is you're basically getting played. These people don't care about you. They only care about the issues that are trendy, that are socially acceptable, and the issues that you really face coming to this country are often revolving around height-based disparities, whether you realize it or not. When you're competing for a mate with towering people of European origin who have, wealthy, prosperous family lineages, who've been fed all the best foods going back generations, you're not competing with white privilege. You're competing with height privilege. And these female Democrat politicians don't recognize that. They don't acknowledge it. And in fact, they perpetuate it. And the irony is, by equating tall man with good man and short man with bad man, they're actually further reinforcing these Eurocentric beauty standards that they claim to be against. They rail against the idea that the female facial standard of beauty should be based around the curved nose and cheekbones and all these things that are synonymous with European beauty standards. And it's very clear to me that AOC is likely really insecure about her facial structure herself. She sees herself as having a very indigenous look, and because that doesn't align perfectly with the Eurocentric beauty standards, she is bitter about that. And so she pushes this idea that we need to distance ourselves from that standard of beauty, which is fine. That's a fine position to take. But when you sit there and you do not acknowledge the male version of that, not just facially, but physical body size, that's when it becomes a problem. And AOC isn't the only example of this. A couple years ago, I heard a clip on the news of this woman named Nuri Martinez. She was some politician from Southern California, but she said something that really stuck with me. She was caught on camera secretly talking shit about the height and appearance of her Central American constituency. Give it a listen.
That's called Cape Town.
Yes.
I see a lot of little short, dark people.
Yeah, puro Oaxacan Koreans. Not even like Kevin, little ones.
I was like, I don't know what village they came, how they got here, but down feels.
How hypocritical is that? They push to bring all these people up here from the place that they've known their whole life, the culture that they're adapted to, the people that they know and love. Bring them up here to this country full of people that tower over them, make them feel small and insignificant. And on top of it, she goes and calls them small and ugly. That's what tan feo means. They're all ugly. So I wouldn't be surprised if AOC as well felt the same way privately. Publicly, she spouts on about how these short Central Americans are just as beautiful as the tall, majestic European people. But you know deep down, she doesn't feel that way. And what she said and what Nuri Martinez said in that other clip demonstrate that clearly and obviously. Now, the reality is that men don't just work to work. We don't just toil our lives away just to survive and live day by day and maybe play some video games on the weekend. No, we work to have a purpose in life. Most men want to work towards having a family. So they bring these people up here from Central America where they probably could have had families down there because the women down there are used to the way they look and more accepting of it. And they come up here to work for cheap and live in squalor. And they think to themselves, man, I hope that with all my hard work, I can attract a beautiful woman into my life and have a family and be able to afford to raise my kids and all this stuff. But the reality is they don't realize that the women in the United States are so obsessed with height that their bodies don't stand even the slightest chance in the modern sexual marketplace. Their value to 99% of women is less than a rock they pass on the street. Progressive women like AOC view those same people that they advocate to bring up here to prop up the society that's crumbling around us. They view those very same people as an eyesore. And nothing makes that more obvious than the statements that come out of their mouths. Given enough time, their mask slips and their true feelings show. So when the hope for love or a family is denied or out of reach, what reason do these immigrants have to come to the United States? What American dream is there? Work just to survive? Meanwhile, who's benefiting? Corporations, politicians getting their votes, billionaires getting cheap labor. And what do? They get nothing but lives of loneliness, misery, and toil, and realizing the ugly truth that the American dream doesn't exist, and they're going to live lives alone because women don't want them because they're too small. Now, I tried to be unbiased in this video, but the reality is that it doesn't matter what your political views are. The purpose of this video is to expose hypocrisy and bring to light an issue that's not being acknowledged or recognized. When your whole political foundation is built around the idea of advocating for the issues of marginalized groups and disillusioned peoples, and you go and not only ignore, but beat down, bully, and shame the most marginalized group that's completely gone unrecognized and unacknowledged, whose issues have been minimized and pushed to the sidelines for generations. Short people don't even have discrimination protections legally. The whole world pretends that the issue of heightism just doesn't exist. And they want to keep it that way because the elites benefit from it. They like putting us in our place. They like creating a submissive servant class who they can easily intimidate, who look up to their leaders and feel tiny and helpless, like they can't fight back. And that's the idea, to psychologically and physically and financially and socially dominate their underlings. And these progressive politicians pushing all these other issues that have already been addressed and talked about ad nauseum, they're part of the problem. They've created a distraction. And nothing makes it more obvious than the words that slip out of their mouth. Give these people a social media platform and enough time, and eventually their true feelings and thoughts come out in the open. And we really need to shine a microscope on it. You can't claim to be a progressive while also normalizing height shaming.